We're going to go ahead and get started. Hello and welcome again. I am so excited to see so many new faces and some old ones as well. Just want to walk through a little bit what our agenda is going to be for today's meeting. We'll go over some housekeeping rules, do some staff introductions, a little bit about the foundation, grant cycle overview, and then just the basics on how to apply. We'll have a couple of folks joining us today to share their perspective. And then at the end, there'll be some time for some Q&A, and you'll have an opportunity to drop your questions in the chat, and we will address those at the end of the presentation. So first, just a couple of housekeeping rules. Please be sure to keep your to stay on mute during the presentation. There will be an opportunity, as I mentioned, to drop questions in the chat. I would recommend that maybe you wait a little bit towards the end of the presentation to drop those questions in, because some of it may be addressed during the presentation. We will be answering all your questions, so don't worry about us running out of time. And also just to note that this presentation is being recorded, so you can share with others or visit our website to review some of the things that we go over. So as part of the community impact team and the FAIR team, I am Donna James Harvey. I am the liaison for the Fund to Advance Racial Equity. We also have on with us is Garrett March, our Associate Director of Community Impact, and you'll hear from Garrett a little later. And then Susan Van Meter, who is our Community Impact Associate, and I'll let Susan take it from here.
Thank you, Donna. So to tell you a little bit about North Texas Community Foundation, our whole purpose is to drive meaningful change through charitable investment. And we do that by helping our donors or our fund holders meet their needs and support the causes that they care about most by connecting them to nonprofits in the community who have needs that they could invest in. We have over 260 fund holder families that we work with. And in 2021, we were able to soar over the 500 million in assets and made grants totaling more than 29 million to nonprofits in our community. And we did that with a team of 18 people here at the foundation. We have multiple grant cycles here at the foundation. We have our Arts Impact Fund, our Disaster Relief Fund called the Better Together Fund. We have our Worth Young Professionals, our Toolbox, our Animal Welfare, Equine Therapy, Land Conservation, and then of course, today's FAIR, our Fund to Advance Racial Equity Grant Cycle. And I'll turn it back over to Donna to tell you about FAIR.
Thank you, Susan. So FAIR was developed to address and fund some of the nonprofits working to address racial issues and inequities in our community. These organizations provide a place where all residents can have the opportunity to fulfill their highest potential, and where disparities in education, safety, health, and economics can be addressed. We're so pleased that as part of Fund, we had 7 lead investors and funders joining these efforts. And they're listed here for you to see. I won't go through them each, but we are so thankful for their contributions and their funding of this work. I also want to acknowledge 2 of our community partners, Colonial Savings, who have been investors in this fund since its inception. And then, of course, Rainwater Charitable Foundation, who is a strong partner in this effort and one of our major donors to this fund. As part of FAIR, we have an advisory council that's made up of a diverse set of community members. They provide counsel, they hold us accountable to the work. They help to connect our grantees and the fund to decision makers in the community. And they're listed here on the next two slides. The asterisk represent those members, a subset that are part of our grants committee. So they are the ones that are reviewing grant applications and LOIs and making funding recommendations. I want to just spend a couple of minutes talking about eligibility for the Fund to Advance Racial Equity. So in order to be eligible to apply for a FAIR grant, an organization must be a 501c3 in Fort Worth or Arlington, or with a 501c3 fiscal sponsor. The fund is also eligible to municipal entities of the city of Fort Worth and the city of Arlington. Organizations must demonstrate a commitment and an active engagement in one or more of our three priority areas, which you'll hear a little bit more about. And the funds must be expended by April of 2023. And I want to just draw your attention a little bit to the Fund to Advance Racial Equity does prioritize organizations with racial diversity in their executive leadership or board, and are organizations that are located in neighborhoods where a majority of the residents are people of color. We recognize that there are many organizations doing this work, and the fund is available to other organizations that may not have some of these other criterias. And so they are also eligible, but particular attention will be paid to those that meet the criteria I listed. Also, eligible funding requests may be made for projects, programs, staffing, and operations. And they must also be related to one or more of our priority areas, which include building understanding, supporting community leadership, and improving community and police trust. This year, we are asking that any organization that might be affiliated with a school or education also receives a letter of support from their board chair. Some ineligible funding, DEI work for individual organizations and municipal entities, any expenses that might have been incurred prior to this grant cycle season in June 2022, funding for organizations that may serve people of color, but that do not have initiatives or programs that align with one or more of our priority areas. We do not support organizations that are engaged in lobbying efforts, political campaigns, or religious programs focused on any sort of evangelism. And with that, I will hand it to Garrett.
Great. Thanks, Donna. I will go ahead and just speak to one question that was just dropped in the chat box real fast, since it's relevant to this section. Does it have to be in Fort Worth and Arlington? Can it be in Dallas County? It does not have to be in Fort Worth and Arlington. It needs to be in Fort Worth or Arlington. The committee did accept proposals from Dallas County-based organizations last year. However, you have to really have a presence in Tarrant County to be eligible for a FAIR grant. And FAIR is not going to fund something that's in Dallas. It is going to be funding something that's happening in Fort Worth or Arlington. Also know that if you are an organization that is based in Dallas County, but you have programming that's happening here, you are competing against organizations that are based in Fort Worth and Arlington, which the committee might choose to prioritize organizations that are based here and are providing programming here. So yes, if you're providing programming in Fort Worth or Arlington and you're a Dallas County-based organization, we'd be willing to consider a proposal from you, but just take those factors into consideration as you're applying. So let's talk about our priority areas that Donna just mentioned. I'm going to dive into those a little bit more. Our first priority area is building understanding between racially diverse groups to raise awareness of challenges and solutions. So this is where we really want to get at helping build bridges of understanding across racial lines in our community. So many problems can be fixed when there's communication and when people are working together on solutions. So we want to help promote constructive dialogue public awareness related to issues around race. We want to help people understand root causes and systems that helped us get to the point in this country where there are such great inequalities. We want to help storytelling and artistic forms of expression that lift up the voice of lived experience of those who've been marginalized by race or show their contributions to the community. And then we also want to support advocacy that empowers the voices of people of color to advance systemic change related to racial equity. Our second priority area is supporting community leadership that advances diverse perspectives. So this phrase activated networks is something that we talk about at the Community Foundation, where we want to help more people who are on the ground get connected to people who maybe have decision-making power in systems like municipal entities, cities, counties. So creating activated networks for people to engage decision makers is something that we're really prioritizing. Thinking about how do we increase diverse representation in community leadership, diversifying nonprofit boards or civic participation. I think Pam might be on this call today, but Board Build has been doing some really exciting stuff in regards to diversifying nonprofit boards and thinking about how we can kind of systemically help people of color be more represented in the nonprofit leadership field. Community-wide professional development that advances best practices and supports change efforts. This one's important to note. We are not funding DEI training for individual nonprofits, as Donna mentioned. But if there's a group that wants to do professional development that engages multiple nonprofits in that, or multiple areas of business, we'd love to consider a proposal for that. And then our third priority area is improving neighborhood police trust, helping residents and law enforcement heal historic divides, bridge gaps, and develop new relationships. We know there's a lot going on in regards to this with the upcoming trial in our community, and we just want to help build the bridges between those two groups there as much as we can. So shared activities between residents and police to build understanding and trust. Diamond Hill Northside Youth Association has been doing some really exciting things in regards to getting police officers involved in their youth programming and getting the officers and youth that are participating in their programs to interact with each other. And then providing actionable data for decision makers regarding perception, policies, practices related to law enforcement. FAIR has funded a couple of surveys that several different groups have participated in on this very topic. So we like to have real data available to our community that helps improve practices and decision making. And then other activities that support equitable policing. We want to think about how we can help law enforcement be best equipped to do their jobs equitably. So the criteria for selection. This is the rubric of how your proposals will be evaluated. Our committee will have a scoring rubric where they will enter numbers in for each one of these categories depending on the weight that that question carries on this scoring criteria. And your organization will be given a score, and then the proposals will be ranked from highest to lowest, top cumulative score by the reviewers who scored that. So the very strongest weighted question on here is that the proposal strongly advances FAIR's priority areas. So it has to address one of those three priorities that we just went over. It might address more than that, but it has to address at least one. And you have to make the compelling case to the committee that this work is really going to fit well into one of those categories and advance that category in our community. You have to clearly define how success will be measured. We love SMART goals here, having specific, measurable, time-bound, actionable goals that you can really clearly say X number of people is going to participate in our programming, or we're going to reach X number of people through our community awareness project. However you can clearly define for us how you're going to measure success is really helpful for our committee to see that you have a plan in place. And then the next question, similarly, is a clear plan presented for how you're going to how you intend to engage the beneficiaries of the grant. So we really want to know, how are you planning on reaching the individuals that you're going to connect with through your FAIR project? Or if your organization is asking for general operating support, tell us about how your organization is already connecting with people that are going to be recipients of the benefit of these funds. Percentage of people of color in executive leadership and in the zip code your organization is based in is both 10%. We did look at some of the proposals that were funded last year, and having a person of color in your executive leadership, as Donna mentioned, is not a requirement. It is a way to get your organization some extra points because we want to make sure that we are prioritizing Black and Brown led organizations or BIPOC led organizations. And also organizations that are really serving grassroots neighborhoods and neighborhood-based projects. We want to make sure we're giving special attention to those. Clearly defines how funds will be used and aligns with the proposal. That's another 10%. Percentage of people of color on your board of directors is 5%, and then funding can be utilized within the specified time frame. That is another 5% as well. We have 4 different categories that you can apply for funding in. One is the 0 to 5,000, 5,000 to 15, 15 to 30, and then 30 to 50. Those are large scale projects only. A letter of intent is required for those 30 to 50,000. We'll talk more about that in a second. And that 30 to 50,000 category is really a get it or not. You are going to be awarded the whole thing you're asking for, or you're not going to be awarded any of it. There's not going to be partial funding in that category. So we'll talk a little bit more about that particular project category. So we have a limited number of grants that will be awarded in that range. Don't know the exact number, maybe somewhere between 4 and 6, but it is going to be our most competitive category. So we just want to help you understand a little bit that this is for larger organizations that have a budget of at least $150,000 or more. You may have gotten a $50,000 or $30,000 to $50,000 category grant last year. That does not mean you're going to get it in this year. And if you get it this year, it does not mean you're going to get it again next year. It is not a multi-year grant. It is a single year grant. You must meet all the other eligibility we've set forth for FAIR, in addition to having an operating budget of at least $150,000. And one of the things we're really going to be looking for these is the level of impact your organization has had in the community. So what we've defined this as in the RFP is a significant impact in the community. And it's going to be up to our committee to decide exactly what significant impact means, but I want to give you a little bit of guidelines here. So for example, if your organization is 2 years old and maybe every summer you hold a summer camp for 50 youth, our organization or our review committee would not consider that something that really falls in line with the significant impact we're looking for. We want to see that you've engaged multiple people from across our community over a sustained period of time. We want to see that your budget reflects significant investment and gifts from the community, that you've got other supporters coming on board to support your work, that FAIR is not the primary source of funding for your operating budget. So we'd like to see a broad demonstration of community support and engagement in your programming. You can apply for funding for capital campaigns, staffing, or special initiatives or projects that have broad community reach. Again, to use the example of a youth camp, you cannot request funding in this category for something like a week-long youth camp. That's not the impact we're looking for here. We're looking for something that's very broad, community benefit, that has maybe a longer term impact, like a couple months or a year or more. So those really short-term, one-time projects are not really the types of things that we're looking for in this category. For the $30,000 to $50,000 category, you have to have your letter of intent submitted by 5 p.m. on March 23rd. Susan's going to walk us through a little bit more of the application process for that in just a minute. You'll be notified if you are being invited to submit a full proposal by March 30th. And then you'll have about 3 to 4 weeks to get that full proposal into us by 5 p.m. on April 22nd, which is the same deadline for all of the other categories to apply. One note here is if you apply in the $30,000 to $50,000 category and you get denied, you can't then turn around and submit an application for $20,000 instead. So we will know who's applying in each category. So you have to pick either you're going to apply somewhere in that $0 to $30,000 category, or you're going to go big and go for the $30,000 to $50,000 category, but you won't be able to do both. And then I'll turn it over to Donna to talk about our exciting grantee cohort.
Thank you, Garrett. So yes, this is probably one of the most exciting components of FAIR, and it's somewhat unique to FAIR, is our cohort model. So once an organization has received and been awarded a grant, the executive director or a member of the leadership team, those who have decision-making abilities, are asked to participate in the self-driven learning networking cohort. And what this provides is an opportunity for organizations to network with one another, learn best practices, and also identify areas that they would like to receive more information and resources through a self-driven workshop and professional development series that we do throughout the year. And so we hope that all organizations take advantage of this, and we encourage executive directors and leadership folks to participate. It really has been one of the most exciting parts of being a FAIR grantee. And so you'll be hearing more about that should you be awarded a grant. And so next, I'm really excited to have this gentleman here with us. Adam McKinney is an assistant professor of dance at Texas Christian University. He's also president of Tarrant County Coalition for Peace and Justice. But I think in the last couple of years, you might be familiar with Adam as one of the leaders in folks spearheading the Fred Rouse Memorial and Lynching Tour. And with that, I'd love for you to hear about Adam's experience as a previous FAIR grantee and some of the work he's doing now.
Thanks, Donna. Hello, everyone. My name is Adam McKinney, and I'm here in Fort Worth. My gender pronouns are he, him, his. I'm a queer, Black, Native, Jewish man. And Tarrant County Coalition for Peace and Justice is the organization for which I serve as president. And we were honored to receive a Fund for Racial Equity grant from North Texas Community Foundation. A little bit about Tarrant County Coalition for Peace and Justice. As I mentioned, we're a nonprofit organization, and we create collaborative education-based opportunities to center the experiences of people of the global majority. TCCPJ catalyzes education and action by encouraging dialogue and building community through conversations, presentations, and art-based investigations. As Don mentioned, we've been doing work to look at the effect of transgenerational trauma as it relates to racism on people in Fort Worth by looking at one particular experience that happened here in Fort Worth and identifying ways in which what we are experiencing now as it pertains to race and racism to that particular experience. And the grant that we received through FAIR has been instrumental in the development of our organization. We received a grant to fund our first executive director, and that grant has been really important in terms of the impact that we want to have on Fort Worth. As Donna mentioned, the cohort opportunity as it pertains specifically to strategic planning, nonprofit governance, and the sharing of resources has also been really important. And I also find that those of us doing this work to reconcile histories of enslavement and their effects as it pertains to racism in our communities sometimes feel isolated doing this work. And coming together as a cohort has contradicted that isolation that we often feel. So, it's like I actually have people that I can count on both to support my work and show up for me and our organization when we need it, doing this work to end racism in our lifetimes. So thanks again, Donna. Thanks again, North Texas Community Foundation, everybody over there. And I encourage all of us to, when we, before we submit our applications, to get somebody to read over our applications, to make sure that what we are communicating is clearly defined, so it makes it easy on the readers, so that they will just put a huge stamp of approval. And I hope that everyone um, gets what they want out of the experience. So thanks again. Thanks for allowing me to speak today. Love you so much, everybody.
Thank you, Adam. That was fantastic. You kind of
Thanks,
geared
Susan.
me up to, or set me up or teed me up for my part of the presentation. So thank you. And we are honored to have granted funding to Tarrant County Coalition for Peace and Justice. All right. So for the timeline of our FAIR grant cycle process, the LOIs for those large scale projects, those $30,000 to $50,000 projects, the LOI will be due on March 23rd. We will notify those who've been accepted and denied by March 30th. And then full proposals will be due on April 22nd by 5 p.m. We will notify you that your organization has been awarded by May 31st. And then in June, we will have a grantee celebration where your grant check will be distributed. Now the good stuff, how do you apply for a FAIR grant? So when you go to our website for North Texas Community Foundation, you're going to come to this first page and you're going to hover over the word nonprofit up here. And there's going to be a box that pops down of selections that you're going to be able to choose from. And you're going to look for the word racial equity. Click on racial equity, and that's going to bring you to our racial equity grants page. On this page, you're going to find things like who are the advisory council members. You're going to find access to the grant portal where you can apply. You can read the full request for proposal, or what people call the RFP here. You can see the past grantees. And then, of course, some of you probably came here and were able to register for today's nonprofit orientation. Once you're ready to apply, you're going to be taken to the grants portal. And for those of you that have applied for grants from us before, this is something that's very familiar to you. But for those of you that have not, you're going to come to this page and create a new account for yourself and your organization. You're going to click on the create a new account, and it's going to take you to this page where you'll begin filling out information about your organization. Once you're done filling out the organization information, you're going to be taken to your applicant dashboard. Once you're in your applicant dashboard, you're going to want to click on the word apply here up at the top. And that's going to take you to every grant that is available at our organization right now. This is where you're going to want to pay close attention to what you're reading here in this grant section, because we do have multiple grants that are available, and we have multiple grants that are available for FAIR. So you're going to want to look at either the 30 to 50,000 request or the 0 to 30,000 request. And that's where you're going to click on which apply button for your grant proposal report. At the end of that section, you're going to see a pro tip where you can download the application questions into Word format. We've found that nonprofits have requested a Word format so that they can type out their questions and their answers before they go into the portal. And so we have made that available at the end of that grant section. And for those of you that aren't familiar, you do have the ability to save an application and return. And if at any point you are ready to submit, you click on that submit button. In your applicant portal, once you've saved your LOI or saved your application, When you return, you're going to see edit your LOI or edit your application. That's what you're going to click on to take you back to your application to continue filling it out. Then once you click submit on your LOI or submit on your application, you're going to receive a generated email to let you know that your LOI or your application has been received by the Community Foundation, and that we'll be back in touch with you soon to let you know the outcome of your application. A part of the application process is going to be a budget form and an organization budget form. So your project budget form here, you're going to list your organization's name, the name of your project, and then this first section right here is going to list, or you're going to list, the secured funding you already have for this project. So if you are needing $12,900 for your project, you're going to list the funds that you've already secured. And then in this section, you're going to list the funds that you are requesting. If you are requesting something from North Texas Community Foundation, how much are you requesting? If you, and these are made up organizations, so if you are requesting money from the Austin Foundation or the Better Foundation, you want to list how much you are requesting from those organizations. And then you want to give an outline of your project expenses and how much that's going to cost. And this is helpful for the grant committee to see how much your project is going to be, how much it's going to take to do your project, and what kind of funding you've already secured and sourced for this project. You also have the ability to submit your organization budget. In the application, you'll see a link to a one-page organization budget. We do encourage you to use that link. It is very difficult for the grant committee members to read 5, 10, or 20 pages of your organization's budget. And this is a very small condensed version of your budget, and is much easier on the grant committee members to review in that process. And now some grant writing tips. And I think Adam hit on this a little bit, and that was writing as if the reader knows nothing about your organization. He made a really good point of having someone look over your work and making sure it makes sense, so that the grant committee members, if they've never heard of your organization, can read and be moved by the work that you do, and put their stamp of approval, to use Adam's words. Don't forget to keep it simple and make sure you proofread. Adam had a great point of having someone else look at it, and they're going to catch those errors that you might not have caught before. Don't forget to share your accomplishments. This is not the time to be bashful. If you are doing great work, let the grant committee members know about that. Just because they may not have heard about you doesn't mean that they may not have known about the person who wrote a letter of support for your organization. And then lastly, if you have a video, add it in there. Let the grant committee members see who you are and what you do. Sometimes it's easier to put what you're doing in a video than it is to write it on paper. And the grant committee members last year and the year before mentioned how great it was to see those videos, and oftentimes could push an organization over the top for funding, just so that they could see a little bit about what they are doing. And then last, this is Donna, of course, she spoke earlier. She is our fair liaison, and then myself, I'm the community impact associate. Donna is available to answer any questions that you may have about eligibility. And if you have any questions about our grant portal, you're more than welcome to reach out to myself. When you are reaching out to the communications staff or to the foundation staff, please make sure that when you're asking questions, that before you ask those questions, you have read through the RFP thoroughly, and that you understand the RFP, or that you have viewed the orientation, been a part of the orientation, because your questions might be answered in that RFP or in this orientation. The staff are able to spend about 5 to 10 minutes on phone calls and emails Due to the number of requests that we get for phone calls and emails, we are having to limit the amount of time that we can spend with organizations. And we ask that you not wait until the last minute to reach out if you have questions. It can be really difficult when we have 90 organizations that are applying for fair funding, and everyone is waiting until the last minute to send questions or make phone calls for us to be able to answer all of them in a timely manner. So we do ask that as it gets closer to the deadline, that you remember that the foundation staff are super busy as it gets towards the deadline. We don't want that to inhibit you from reaching out if you do have questions for us. The last thing I do want to mention is that the grant portal is the only place that we do accept applications. We do not accept them by mail, by email, by dropping them off at our office. You are only able to submit applications to the grant portal, and all applications have a deadline by 5 p.m. And just to be mindful that even though your computer clock might read 4:59, when you push submit, if the grant portal did not pick it up until 5 o'clock, it will be denied and seen as a late entry and not accepted. So just as a side note, to make sure that you are mindful that you are submitting a little bit before that time frame, just to make sure that it is submitted on time. And now I'd love to introduce Juan Daniel Garcia. Juan is an employee of Fort Worth ISD. He is a supervisor for the Parents as Teachers Texas Home Visitation Program. He has served over 20 years the Hispanic Wellness Fair, which takes place on the first Saturday in August at the Will Rogers Complex. And if that isn't impressive enough, he has a 29-year volunteer history with Catholic Diocese of Fort Worth, where he has served as a coach and a youth minister. He's a part of the Racial Equity Guidance Council for Early Learning Alliance. He is on the board for Tarrant County Child and Protective Services. And this is Juan's second year serving on our Fair Advisory Council and second year serving as a grant committee member. So I would love to introduce Juan. And Juan, thank you so much for being with us today. And we would love to hear your thoughts on your experience as a Fair Grant Committee member. Any tips that you might have for organizations applying, and then of course things that you look for when you are reviewing those FAIR applications.
I think you're on mute.
I am. Okay, sorry. I'm in a big office with other people. So thank you for introducing me, Susan. Sorry, I was in a training till about maybe 30 minutes ago, so I'm a little loopy. My father used to say, when someone has to present you and it takes more than a couple of minutes, you're old. So I'm kind of old, but been fortunate enough to work in the community for a long time. I'm sure all of you have history as well. The biggest thing I can stress to everyone is when you're putting your thoughts on paper and you're sharing your ideas with each other, don't leave anything out. Don't think, well, I don't want to be overboard. I do stress that if you should take a self-reflection of your communication, your organization, your board, those that work with you and around you. And if you are missing pieces here or there, after you apply with us or when you do apply, work on that as well. I mean, long-term, that's what we're trying to make impact with FAIR. I mean, really, we're trying to serve our community or serve our constituents, people that look like me. To speak to what Adam said, I'm a brown, bald-headed man that grew up in the north side of Fort Worth, who really is Fort Worth. And I understand the changes that have gone on and the changes that need to continue, hopefully with the work that all of you are doing. Biggest thing is, the biggest one that caught my eye, I remember from last year, is budgeting. You do submit maybe your program budget or your overall budget. That's wonderful, but we need to see what is specifically and how our funds are going to be used with this. And that's very important to us. To be honest with you, we had one organization had a pretty good application, but when it came to the budget, it was very foggy. We couldn't really figure out where the funding where our funding would fit. And that was a drawback for us, to be perfectly honest with you. I did see there that someone had said that if I had applied before and I didn't receive it, and I didn't receive funding, can I get some feedback? I think we gave notes and what have you. So if you do get back with Donna and Susan, they will be more than, I mean, I know we shared with a couple that, man, we'd really like to fund them, but there's 2 or 3 things out there. And then another is on that DEI training. The biggest thing there is stress to organizations. If you haven't done that, go out and find someone. There's plenty of organizations that are willing to work with you or partner with others, because these programs are very effective. But if you internally aren't ready, and what I mean by that is either by staff, by board, who you're serving, then it kind of falls short, to be perfectly honest with you. You can have a great laid out plan, a great budget, we fund it, and then maybe things don't quite work as well as you'd like. The biggest thing I stress to people is if you've got to be able to internally say, we're prepared to do what we need to do. And if you're not ready, that's fine. Go ahead and apply and see how we can help you, or how we can help guide that direction in any capacity. And what the biggest thing I find most compelling is something that's a little different, a little bit out of the box, a little bit of, what haven't we tried? Or because if you live in Fort Worth, you've heard the same song and dance quite a few times. To go back to Adam and what they're doing, their project is it's huge. What their initiative, it's something that maybe wouldn't have been tried just because it was so big, but they've had consistency with it and a lot of success now. And I do stress that to you. If you do apply with us and things don't work out, pick our ear. If you ever run into me anywhere, I can't get specific with you, but I can kind of give you some broad direction in some capacity with that. And again, like all I can tell you is, wrapping up my 3 minutes or whatever I had, was the biggest thing is just be open and honest with yourself as a person, as an organization, and what you really want to do in the community. Because if you put pen to paper and it just doesn't match, some of us will pick it right up, and we're very blatant and honest in our review with each other. And a couple of people are going, "Oh, this is wonderful," and then we're going like, "Well, I really got to share my perspective as a brown man from Fort Worth, Texas." And again, good luck to all of you. If any of us can be a help to you in any way, please give us a call or contact Donna or Susan, and whatever we can do to help you in any way, more than willing to be here for you. Thank you, and good luck to everyone.
Thanks, Juan Danielle. We appreciate you being on the call today, and appreciate you being on our advisory council, and glad to have your voice represented in the review process. So thank you for what you bring to the table here. So now we're going to turn to our Q&A section of today's program. If you do have any other questions, go ahead and drop them in the chat. We've had a couple come in. What standard or map are you using to classify a neighborhood as racially diverse? Great question. In the proposal online, there is actually a link to the US Census Bureau's website, and you can put in the organization zip code, and it will actually populate with data about the demographics of that zip code. So we're using zip codes, and you can find that data on the link that's in the application. If you have any questions, once you're in there and you can't figure out how to use it, reach out to me and I can help you navigate that. Would you accept a joint application with 2 organizations working together? Yes, we would. We would love to see that. We love collaboration. It would not change the dollar amounts that you could be requesting funding for, but if you wanted to partner with one organization or more, that's fine. I would just pick one particular organization who would be designated as the lead, and you will apply under that organization's name. You can use that organization's budget. They'll be responsible for managing the grant. So one organization would be the recipient of the funds if awarded a grant, kind of manage the reporting aspect of it as well. But you'll just note in the application that these are our other partner agencies that are involved in this project with us. Donna, is there anything else you'd want to say on that one?
No, matter of fact, I think Juan was touching on that a little bit, that I think it's great when organizations partner together. I think that just builds a stronger application. And I just want to just reiterate something that Juan said as well. If an application makes it through the eligibility criteria and goes on to the grants committee, we always ask the committee if it is okay to share comments. And as Juan mentioned, they usually do. So if for whatever reason your application is denied and you would like to know what some of the comments or the feedback, we are happy to share that with you.
As long as the committee has given us permission
As long
to.
as, yes.
Yeah. If they don't, then we do keep their process confidential, but sometimes they do have very specific feedback that they want to share. And that gets into, Juan Daniel, you touched on this as well, but someone asked a question about if they were previously denied funding, is there any way to get feedback on why the original submission was denied? If it was a request from last year, as Juan Daniel said, we can go back to our notes and see who we had specific feedback to give to. If it was something that the committee did not have specific feedback on, then we will not be able to share that. But if it was something that we did have their permission to share feedback on, we will. Well, first of all, your organizations have already received that feedback, but we can revisit that with you in case grant writers have changed or things like that. If it was a toolbox request that you did and you got denied that, because I know we just had a round of toolbox grants, we have shared all the feedback we're able to share on those particular requests. So we're not able to give any additional feedback on those. But if it was fair related last year, then let us know. There was a question about the LOI requirements for the $30,000 to $50,000 category. So just to be clear, all of the requirements that are in the RFP are the exact same requirements for the LOI. You'll note in the RFP that there is a section about those large scale 30 to 50,000 projects, and they have a few additional requirements. So that's where having a budget of at least $150,000 comes into play, and then also having the broader community support some of those things. So just make sure you go back and review those slides or read the RFP. We really would encourage everyone on here before you reach out to Donna, Susan, or I, read the RFP from the beginning to the end, because everything that we've thought of that we could put in there, we've put in there to try to make it as simple for you as possible. Let's see, is this training document available to us? Yes, so we'll put this recording online and then email it out. Susan, you want to talk about maybe the timeframes that those will be available or that we could get this out in? It'll be either sometime this week or next week.
Yes, so we will post this training orientation on our website under the Racial Equity Grants tab, and it should be, hopefully, fingers crossed, tomorrow. If not, it'll be next week. And then as for the slideshow, sorry, I lost my words there for a second. As for the slideshow, what I can do is turn the slideshow into a PDF, and anyone who was registered for today's nonprofit orientation, I can send that PDF out to you.
Great. Yeah, that sounds great. Are there any other questions that we can help answer before we end today's call? All right. Well, if you think of any, feel free to reach out to us. We are here and available to be a resource to you. Thank you all for being here today. All of you play an important role in our community. We may or may not know you, but the fact that you're here shows that you're committed to improving our community and making it a place where everyone can thrive and are engaged in some hard work. And we are here to help support your work and help it become even more successful. So thank you all for everything that you're doing in our community. If we don't know you already, feel free to go on our website, go under our nonprofit tab, scroll down to the bottom, and you can sign up for our newsletter. You can sign up for foundation updates as well as RFP announcements. Yeah, if any of you have young professionals that are in your organizations, we're having a young professionals event tomorrow night focused on children's mental health. It's actually an opportunity for young professionals to give and then collectively make a grant. So you can go on under our donors tab on our website and click on the Worth page if you're interested in learning more about that. Thank you all for being here and for your time. And we look forward to reading lots of great applications. Y'all have a great day.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.